I'm I'm really worried about this video. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Scott. I read books and make music, so that's what you will find on my channel. So today I want to talk about a very popular book and why I personally think it was very problematic. But first, I just want to say that, of course, this is just my opinion. And the wonderful thing about art and literature is that everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and my negative feelings will not detract from your love or enjoyment of the book. So just remember this before you decide to hate me immensely. Keep an open mind and just hear me out. The book I'm talking about is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I have seen this book plastered all over the internet. It's on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, literally everywhere. And also, I have not seen any negative reviews for this book except maybe very few on Goodreads. I have not seen one negative booktube review, and in fact, I'm kind of worried about making this video, but at the same time, I think it's perfectly fine to have a different opinion on an extremely popular book, and I'm not the type to shy away from voicing my thoughts, although I'm not going to rant. I don't like to rant. I wasn't originally intending to make this video because when I finished the book fairly quickly, I didn't understand the hype. Everyone was saying how much they loved it and how they cried and were just destroyed over it. And I guess I'm heartless because I was just like, nah. But the book is pretty fast paced and I just read it quickly. And even though I didn't love it, I also didn't think much of it. And I thought I would just forget about it in a few days. But then I found myself thinking back more and more about the themes and the storyline. And I found myself getting more and more annoyed and occasionally angry. So even though I know this video is not going to resonate with everyone or probably anyone, I still wanted to talk about it. And before we get into it, there are going to be spoilers, so stop watching this if you haven't read the book or intend to read the book. First of all, let's start with the positives. This was my first Colleen Hoover book, and she's very talented. I liked her writing style. It's engaging, it's fast-paced, so I'd definitely be open to reading more from her, even though this really isn't my genre, but a good writer is a good writer no matter the genre they write in, so I probably will read more from her. And actually, if you have recommendations based on the fact that It Ends With Us was really not for me, let me know in the comments down below. However, I really thought that this book had some issues and dealt with certain themes in a problematic way. Our main girl, Lily Bloom, grows up in an abusive household where her father is routinely very abusive to her mother, but never to her. He hits her mother, he mistreats her, verbally and sexually abuses her, and yet he's never violent with Lily. But her mother never works up the courage to leave him until at a certain point he gets sick, I think with cancer, but I'm not sure, and he dies. And Lily never understands how her mother could let her father treat her like that without leaving. We meet Lily as an adult right after her dad's funeral. She's standing on a rooftop in Boston, and there she meets Ryle, a neurosurgeon who is basically having a fit of anger on the rooftop after a bad day, kicking chairs around, just being generally furious with the world. And that to me was an immediate red flag because it showed straight away that he could not control his temper. Anyway, they start talking, they start chatting, they kind of bond immediately. They start telling each other these naked truths. And so Lily tells him, I had to say three good things about my dad at his funeral. And I just stood there and said, 3 good things about my father were, and then she doesn't say anything because she has nothing good to say about her father. And he tells her this heart-wrenching story. And I also found him kind of creepy in the way he relates to her, coming on to her in a really strong way. Anyway, long story short, because if you're watching this, you already know the story. They end up in a relationship. She opens her own flower business. She's called Lily Bloom, guys. What else could she do with her life? She's successful. He's successful. His sister, who is mega rich, also ends up working for her, basically for free, just to have something to do. They get married. Ryle and Lily get married. He buys her an apartment, a really nice apartment, by the way, without consulting her. other enormous red flag. And he turns out to be abusive, very abusive, which I was sort of expecting. It starts off as kind of an accident and then gets more and more serious. And at a certain point, she ends up in the hospital. She's really badly injured. In the meantime, through flashbacks told through her teenage diary, where she used to write to Ellen DeGeneres, and tell her about stuff, we meet her ex-boyfriend from the past, Atlas, who was also abused as a child/teenager and who Lily helped get back on his feet since he was homeless and living in the abandoned house behind hers. And conveniently, he's now a super successful chef in Boston, and he has his own restaurant called Bibs. He's the one who takes Lily to the hospital when she's really hurt because he's the one she calls. He sees straight away that Ryle is abusive and gives her his number, saying, if you ever need it, call me, etc. In the end, and I really need to talk about the ending because that's the main aspect which I consider problematic, she ends up pregnant. She sort of starts to trust Ryle again, to the point where Ryle is living in their apartment again after she kicked him out, and he's helping out with the final stages of the pregnancy, and Ryle is begging her to get back together. And after she delivers their daughter, she has this epiphany and realizes that the best thing for her daughter to stop the cycle of abuse and to avoid ruining her daughter's relationship with her father is to get a divorce and ultimately share custody. To me, this is an extremely oversimplified, unrealistic, and problematic view of what is going on. I've never been in an abusive relationship, but I'm a lawyer. And I know I'm not your typical lawyer, and it isn't something I talk about on this channel because it's really not what I want here, but I'm a lawyer nonetheless. And I don't deal with family law or criminal law as main areas of practices, but I have colleagues who do, and I've been to court on similar cases. There are just situations that you just want to stop from happening in any way possible, way worse than this book. So when Lily decides to get a divorce and share custody of the child with Ryle, who has just shown over and over that despite the fact that, yes, he is not a bad person, he cannot control his temper at all. He literally blacks out with rage to the point where he can't control himself. This just felt really wrong to me. And the reason she chooses this solution is because her father was never abusive to her. So she wants to save Ryle and her daughter's relationship by never allowing the child to see how he treats her, as in her, Lily. But it isn't that simple, because ultimately, and I understand from the author's note that Colleen Hoover was in a similar situation as well with her father, and I can't help but feel sorry for her and really feel for her. But ultimately, Lily and Colleen got lucky. They got lucky that extremely violent men never hurt them. But here's the point. You don't know. And you can't know what these people are going to do if something triggers them. And from my perspective, leaving an infant who cannot even walk or talk unsupervised with a potentially abusive person who literally blacks out from rage is an irresponsible and contradictory choice to everything Lily has decided basically up to that point, because it's really impossible to predict how that person will react to external stressful situations, even if they don't want to hurt the person they have in front of them. In fact, the first time Ryle hit Lily, they were both drunk. She was laughing. He hurt his hand and he kind of slapped her in rage. He hit her in rage because she was laughing at the situation, and he just hurt the hand which he performed surgery with. It felt like an accident even to the reader. He didn't even realize it. He was sorry straight away, and I did feel for Ryle because I could see how tortured he felt and how he just wanted to get control, but that's just not enough. That's the point to me. He couldn't get control. The same can be said for just so many abusive men. And yes, I get that this is fiction. I understand that this is not real life. But this book is being praised as an accurate portrayal of an abusive relationship. But it isn't, in the end, an accurate or realistic portrayal of the I don't want to say solution because there isn't one, but of the actions that should be taken to protect oneself as much as possible, not telling anyone, not involving anyone is just such a bad choice, even though I understand where Lily is coming from. And Colleen Hoover did a great job of portraying Lily's state of mind and what is going through her head as she tries to rationalize Ryle's behavior. And again, I've never been in an abusive relationship, but literally, people come to see me when everything has already gone to shit. People don't go to lawyers when everything is fine. They book an appointment when things are going wrong. And believe me, it's really difficult, mentally speaking, because I only see the worst in people and the worst situations possible after they've already happened. And it's like watching a train wreck, because most times when they're explaining cases to you, you can literally see all the red flags and all the potential risks laid out right in front of you, and that person did absolutely nothing to manage them or prevent them. And do you know what the number one thing I hear when someone is explaining to me is? I never thought that that person could do or would do something like that. And that is the number one reason why they didn't take any precautions against possible consequences, i.e. get a written contract, get a restraining order, etc., etc. So this is becoming too legal, but anyway, I read a comment under one of the many raving YouTube reviews for It Ends With Us, which said something along the lines of, I feel like this book teaches an important lesson and something about the importance of having the strength to get out and divorce when it's the time to do so. But I still feel, and obviously this is due to my background, I still feel like that's the wrong lesson. And people shouldn't be taking this away as a lesson from the book. And the right lesson, in my opinion, would be to involve authorities and involve professionals, because once again, you really don't know when this person is going to snap and what this person can potentially do to you or your child. I'm not an American lawyer, so I can't comment on how expensive or traumatizing this process would be in the US. And it's certainly not easy in my country either. But sometimes it's really the only way. I mean, so many cases of domestic abuse result in death. So I just didn't like the end message of the book. Good for her that she had the strength to leave and ask for a divorce. But I just feel like that solution is not a plausible solution in many, many situations. Honestly, Ryle actually reacted really well when Lily asked for a divorce, and that's not a given either. Many men can react really violently because, and I'm going to say this again, you don't know when a person with abusive tendencies is going to snap and how, why, or with who. Look at Lily's father, for example, who was never violent with anyone except Lily's mother. But then when he found Atlas in bed with Lily, he completely snapped and basically almost killed the guy with a baseball bat. Who's to say Ryle wouldn't do something similar? Honestly, who's to say Atlas can't do something similar? He was abused as a kid. We barely know anything about him. He basically hasn't had any relationships. You just don't know. Another thing that I found kind of annoying in this book is the way Colleen Hoover wraps up every storyline tidily in a little bow, and everyone gets their happy ending with basically no consequences. Lily has a good relationship with Ryle. Ryle gets to see his daughter. She has a super successful business. Her friends stay friends with her despite one of them being Ryle's sister. She conveniently has an amazing apartment because Ryle is rich and bought her one. At the very end, she bumps into Atlas once again, who is a very successful, rich, gorgeous chef, and obviously has been waiting for her all this time. And it's hinted that they will get together. At least that's what I got out of the ending. And I also found this to be very unrealistic and kind of oversimplified. So those are my thoughts on the book. Once again, this is my opinion and only my opinion. And obviously we are influenced in our enjoyment or perception of books by our own life experiences. So clearly, as a person who gets to see a lot of horrible situations on a day-to-day basis, I was influenced by that. And that's it, really. I thought this book was well written, but overhyped and problematic, and almost romanticizes issues which really shouldn't be romanticized, and ultimately presents a simplified solution which will supposedly fix all problems. And I don't see that as plausible, nor do I see it as a good message to take away from the story. Of course, if you love this, that's great for you. My opinion won't take away your enjoyment of the book, and it's always good to have an open discussion. I think I will be staying away from overhyped books for a while because I'm just almost always disappointed or underwhelmed. I am interested in reading more Colleen Hoover though, especially Verity has caught my eye. So if you don't completely hate me by this point, give me your Hoover reading recommendations in the comments down below, and like and subscribe, of course. If anyone else feels this way about It Ends With Us, please let me know. There are 7 billion people on this planet. I cannot be the only person who has this opinion on the book. Anyway, that's it for today, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!